And hello, everyone, and welcome to Get a Grip with Coach Elex. I'm your host, Coach Elex. With me, my amazing co host,
Stephen Frederick Masick is here.
attorney in medium.
Yes.
It's in the house, and we're coming to you live from Cape Cod today. And it's actually a rainy, gloomy day here. I mean, it's a beautiful day, but I know it's snowing in other parts of the state, right?
Yeah, well, in Rhode Island, it is northern Rhode Island. Yes.
Yeah,
And I'm
so
sure in
those.
Massachusetts and, yeah.
Yeah, I know. I think in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, in the northern part of the state,
I don't like to speak about that.
Stephen wants snow here and now. But thankfully, we don't. We have some rain, and it's just beautiful looking out. So, we are excited to have today's show since we took last week because I was traveling and I actually got back Friday, not in time to do my show, but here we are. And for those of you who saw the promo, Dr. Charles Daniels was scheduled to be our guest today, but he had a last minute conflict, so he has been rescheduled. And you get Stephen and I, and today we're going to have an amazing conversation about mindsets and how our mindsets gets us to live our fulfilling life. So I think this is an awesome conversation. But before we get to that, Stephen,
Yes.
I know there's been lots going on. You had an amazing event last night, and I'm saying
Yes.
amazing because it was amazing. 100 plus people showed up in this venue in Sturbridge, Massachusetts. Want to tell people about it?
Sure. I'd love to. It was a great, great, magical night. And if I sound a little off, I have another sinus infection, so I feel much better. I feel good. I just probably don't sound my usual self. But last night was amazing. Like Elix said, the venue, Elix and I had never been to this particular venue, the Barn at White Farm in Sturbridge, Massachusetts. The people were so great, and the recipients, the audience, like Elix said, 100 plus people were just amazing also. And I think that the messages and validations started pretty much almost immediately. But
Yes.
I just wanted to give a big shout out to Alex, who's the executive director of the Chamber of Central Mass South. She just out of nowhere emailed me and said, we're looking to do for the first time ever this kind of event, and would you be interested? And I said, heck yes. And last night, Elix, you and I asked her, how did you find me? And she said she Googled some mediums that she just wasn't feeling, and she got to my website and said, I want this guy.
I
So,
feel this guy. She
yes.
felt you.
Yes, she did.
And
did,
she
but
was not wrong. By the way, it's the Chamber of Commerce. You said the chamber. I mean, it's
I said
the
what?
chamber. You said the chamber is the Chamber of Commerce in Central Mass.
Yeah. Well, it's called the Chamber of Central Mass South. Yeah,
Yeah, but
Chamber of Commerce. Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, got it.
Anything else you'd like to correct me on?
Well, just make sure
Elix,
that that we are
Syntron.
clear
But
as to what we're
one of the
talking about.
one of the
Yeah.
greatest things that I did last night, like I usually do or try to do, is I brought my signature whisper in a note, and for the first time I did 3 of them, and for the first time ever I had one from a dog. So how this works is that I meditate and focused on this event that was last night. Thursday morning, yesterday morning, I just had, after my meditation, asked 3 different spirit to step forward, stand next to me, and dictate to me what they want me to write on this whisper in a note to a recipient in the venue last night. And I have no idea who these are for. But the first one was a mother, second one was a father, and the third one was a dog, which was fascinating. I have never done that. The amazing thing, and all of them, all 3 were claimed, right, Elix?
Yes.
At the end of my readings, I read the notes. All 3 went. But the woman,
Multiple people, by the way, claiming
Yes.
these notes.
yes, and the woman that claimed the dog one was, of course, in tears when I gave her the note and we talked about it. And when I was doing the note and listening to the dog, I said, "What? How would you like me to end this note? Like initials, name? What do you want me to do?" So the dog said, do L as in, Lisa, and S as in Stephen. So I put LS at the end of the note. And when she claimed the note, in tears, looked at me and Elix and said, L and S are the first initials of my name and his name. How amazing is that?
Yeah, that is unbelievable. You also got a young girl that came to you after with her mom, and she claimed the letter, the whisper from dad, and that was
Oh,
just
Elix.
that was beautiful.
Yeah, that's why I said that last night was magical because at the end, and again, I read the notes at the end. This woman came with her daughter. The daughter was 10, if I had to guess, 10 years old.
Yes,
And the mom said, and the daughter was so energetic and just like staring at me. And the mom said, Stephen, we think the note from father is ours. We think it's her dad. So, I had the note and she was looking at it, and God, they were just pulling off and pulling out stuff in that note that was like everything the mother said. The little girl was yes, 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 and mom at one point said almost like calm down. She was so excited. So they did say that they're going to do a private reading with me, the mother and the daughter. But this little girl was the cutest, and I told her, "You were here because your father wanted you to be here." So, and then the mother note went to all three notes. I left with nothing. How cool is
yes,
that?
it was amazing. It was amazing. The other thing that for me, anyways, there were 100 plus people in that event, and I counted less than five guys. It was all women, and it was like the groupies who follow Steven, and they just wanted Steven all for themselves. So, and it really was. It was five guys, including me,
That's pretty
which
cool.
which is pretty amazing. And then the other thing, Steven, again worth noting, is you started with this incredible son, and mom was the one there, and and at first she was having a hard time validating stuff, right? But then
Yeah,
at
I
the
mean,
end of the night, she comes to you and she says, "What?"
yeah, I mean, she validated things, but there was just, she was in a place that was so excited, and it happens with people that, she had one child who was one son, and she lost him. So you can imagine that she's begging and praying, I'm sure, to him and to anybody else. She's asking for him to come through. But this venue was so beautiful that they set us up in this bridal suite before the event, right?
Yes.
And as I said to Elix, I felt very pretty in there, the bridal suite. I just felt like a bride, very very pretty.
Good.
Not that I ever want to wear a gown, but I still felt pretty.
Well,
And
you are my bride.
um, uh, not
Move
literally.
move along, Betty.
Yeah, not literally. Again, no desire to be in a gown, no desire at all. But I felt pretty. That's what that's the good stuff. But I said to Elix last night in the bridal suite, I said, "There's a young son that's here, and I have to start with him because I am not going to be able to move forward with anybody else because he was like his arms were crossed, looking at me like mom's here, and we're starting with me." And I'm like, "Okie dokie," and that's where I started, and you know. Of 100 people, I'm just telling them what I'm getting, and I'm sort of looking around and seeing who is this for, and I know the mother's in that audience, and then finally I just hear, this voice. I lost my son. It was the only one in the audience, and she's
Yes.
raised her hand, and it was such a powerful way to start the readings of that night.
Very, very moving.
Yes.
And it was beautiful. It was really beautiful.
But she when what Elix was talking about with validations, I said, your son's bringing up like the motorcycle, and she's just staring at me like I don't know, and then of course at the end she came over and asked if she could hug me, but she said she was with her girlfriend, and she said the girlfriend said, I knew all this, but I just didn't want to interfere. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she said, the motorcycle, that's her son had a motorcycle. It's still in the garage. And just last year, someone tried to steal it. And I'm like, oh my God. And she said, Stephen, it was just so much. I was overwhelmed. And I said, I get it. I understand. So.
Yes, that's what happens in when people connect with their loved ones in readings. So it was a beautiful event, and shout out to the Chamber of Commerce. in Western Mass. And also we had a few friends, April from the public house in Sturbridge.
Yes, yes.
So shout out to April if you're listening.
Who
Thank
looked
you for
fantastic last night, by the way.
fabulous. We've never seen her in
Regular clothes.
regular clothes, and actually I almost don't recognize her.
No,
But
I mean,
shout
she's
out to
pretty
her.
anyway, but she looked really beautiful last night.
Yes, amazing. And of course, a big shout out to our girlfriends, Teresa and Jeannie from Worcester Courts. They're both retired now, but they're originally Steven's friends, and they became my friends too.
Yeah, I thought you were going to really to give a shout out just saying my friends. That's what I thought you were going to say. You don't beat those two. You just don't. And they had other family, and I didn't know this, but you told me, Alex, that they didn't even know other family purchased tickets until they all got there, which is
Yeah,
cool. There's like
yeah.
7 of them.
They didn't even know they were all going to the same event until they found each other there.
Exactly, but there were some comedians in that venue last night.
Oh, it was funny.
There were a lot of laughs in this 2-hour event. There really was, which just helps the whole night. But the validations were just incredibly magical.
Yes, they were. And you know what, Stephen? Today we're talking about mindsets, and how, you know, our mindsets really it's what determines the kind of life that we live. And I can't help it, but when I'm hearing you pass on messages from loved ones who have crossed over, it's almost like a reminder to people again and again and again that don't waste the now. Like, this is your opportunity to live your best life. So it's really interesting that our subject today is it's somewhat related to the messages that you keep giving people from their loved ones, don't you
I
think?
think I think it's not somewhat related. I think it's 100% related, because I always tell people when I'm doing my classes or just doing readings that you cannot get connections and signs if you're not in the present moment. It's the only way that it can actually happen. So they go hand in hand. And right before I started my show last night, I told people that every one of them gets signs, and that one little sort of trick exercise, something that brings you even more validations, is just get a notebook, and especially focus on when you've got, like, if you lost your mom and it's her birthday coming up in 2 weeks. Be mindful of different things around you in your environment, like signs. When you get them, write them down, date them, and write the description down. Somehow, some way, when you do that, it just opens the door a little bit further to get the next sign, and it keeps going and going. And it's so amazing to look back at these entries and see how better you're getting at looking at signs. But it goes hand in hand, Elix. Mindset is present, and same thing with signs.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it's time to take a break. So when we come back, we're going to talk about mindsets, which is, that established set of attitudes that a person holds. And we're going to talk about the benefits of having a powerful, positive mindset, especially at the beginning of the year, especially now. Last time we talked about, a couple of shows ago, we talked about skipping those New Year resolutions and working on goals instead. As we work on setting and achieving our 2023 goals, having the right mindset creates the space for you to achieve everything and anything that you want. So we're going to take a break. When we come back, Stephen the Medium and I are going to talk about mindsets. We're going to be right back. And hello, everyone, and welcome to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. Happy Friday, everyone. I am your host, Coach Elix, with me, my wonderful co host,
Stephen F.
Stephen Frederick, Masek attorney and medium, and most importantly, my husband
Hubby.
and hubby of about 30 years.
Just
April,
about.
April 8th. So now, do you know, we're talking about mindsets. Do you know that mindsets, Stephen, play a significant and crucial role in determining the outcome of our lives? In everyone, all of you listening should understand how to adapt, how to shift your mindset. In doing so, can improve your health, can reduce stress. You can become more resilient, endure life's challenges, and most importantly, my goal for you is that at the end of today's show, you know that your mindset, you can use your mindset to create a fulfilling life, the life that it is that you want. So for me, when I think of a mindset, right, what does it mean for me? I think of, in terms of an analogies and, a mindset for me, it's like the engine of a car. If you put premium gas, your car runs in optimal conditions. If you put cheap gas, it's still gonna run, but it's not gonna run in an optimal kind of way. So a mindset is also the same. Whatever you feed your mind, it's gonna get you, whatever outcome that is. So if you feed your mind negative stuff, it's gonna lead you to perhaps negative results and negative outcomes. So this is about how to learn to feed your mind the right thing so that you can create that life that you want. So now for you, Stephen, what does mindset mean for you?
Well, I think it means so much to me. If you asked me 10 years ago, I'm not really sure I'd know how to answer it. Now, I still don't know how to answer it because it's on the other side of the spectrum for me, listening to spirit, reading things, understanding things, what mindset means. I mean, I completely agree with it, absolutely everything you said. But um, one thing that I have noticed, over the probably the past year with mindset is that how simple and quick it can be changed. I think
Yes.
that is the thing that I've learned the most about mindset. And when you start from there, I think that's a great way to start because you can figure out you can change everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, look at you, for example, right? Yesterday you had a major event and you weren't feeling your very best, because you started, you had like a minor, what was it, a sinus thing going on.
Well, it's not minor. I mean, as you can tell in my voice, yeah. I mean, before we left the house, I was for the half hour before we left the house, I was sleeping.
That's right. So you had two choices. One mindset could have been, this is not going to go well. I am really sick. I am not up to this, and tonight it's not going to be a good event. Or the other option that you had is, I am this is going to happen and I'm going to be good and I'm going to have the best event possible. Now, I don't know, Stephen, what mindset you set for yourself going into the event, but I can tell you, and I told you this later on, that if people didn't know that you weren't feeling up to par before that event, they didn't know by listening to you last night, because nothing came across as off. You were on point, you were incredible, you were extraordinary, and I know every single person in that room walked away wowed. But that had a lot to do with your own mindset. What do you think?
No, Alex, thank you for saying that. Yeah, I did exactly what you said, and on the way there, it was thank God for you, Alex. You drove, It was like an hour and a half, if not even more, to get to Sturbridge from the Cape. But I'll tell you, almost three quarters of the way there, we're sitting in the car, and I said to Elix, "Oh, this is wonderful." My left ear just like sort of plugged up or clogged up rather from the sinus infection. So, I'm going to be walking in like, what? Asking people, giving validations, what? Or I keep my right ear towards them, like, say it again. But even with that said, for a second, I had that like anxiety, like, oh my God, even something added to this. But then I just thought, you know what? I am going into this, like you said, Elix, with a mindset that I'm perfect the way I want to be. And I know that's the reason why that event just was so successful.
And he had everything to do with you in the intention that you brought in and how the mindset that you intentionally created for yourself and for that event. Now, many people um, are conditioned to think that we're born with a certain mindset. But do you think we are born with a mindset, or do you think we develop it, Stephen?
No, I mean, I think like we develop it. I mean, I know genetics plays such a role in pretty much everything, but I think something like a mindset is that there comes up. I mean, I think you do develop most of it, and it gets to a place when you have to become responsible for this mindset. And the greatest thing is you've got control over it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I certainly believe our culture, our life experiences, our belief systems, all of that plays a vital role in our mindsets. But I also believe that how to shift your mindset, it's something that can be learned. It's something that you can train yourself to learn to make that correction and make it in real time. Now, of course, we have been conditioned. Listen, I grew up with, in a culture that, very often has a very negative mindset. How often, Stephen, are we around my mother and whatever the circumstances, she goes for the negative, right?
Right.
That's part of the culture. That's how she was brought up. And as a result, I grew up hearing that. So for me, it would have been very easy to adopt that negative mindset, that fixed mindset. Oh, poor me. Oh, that was never for me. You got to learn to be okay with less than or whatever. And I got trained to create a new narrative. By the way, that's also part of our reality as human beings. We're almost always creating narratives. Something happens, and immediately we create a narrative about what happened. And again, depending on culture, depending on your life experience, and depending on your belief system, that all of that plays a role into the narrative that you create. But that, having said that, the narrative, it's a made up narrative. It's invented. You make it up. It's not a fact. So what that means is that if it's made up, if it's invented, that every single one of us, we have the capacity and the skill to make up something else. And that's when you can learn to make a shift and shift that mindset from a negative mindset to a positive mindset to really learn how to make that correction, how to reframe that narrative in your head in real time. Having said that, it takes practice. It's not as easy. It's easier said than done because, again, we've been conditioned for years and years and years. Many of us have lived an entire lifetime making narratives that are negative. That leads to a very negative mindset. So all of the sudden, you can't just, blink your eyes or snap your fingers and just say, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna shift." No, it's gonna require a whole lot of intention and a whole lot of purpose. But you can actually do this. I recently met with a young woman, one of my clients. She had an accident, and it was a very bad accident. and she was stuck on the negative narrative. The oh my God, I could have died. Oh my God, it could have been worse. Oh my God, what if? And that narrative was leading her to a very negative mindset. By the way, a mindset that was keeping her from getting back into the car. She couldn't even drive to the office. She had to have a girlfriend drive her to the office. So that again, that is because she's conditioned to sort of give power to that negative mindset because that's all she's done her entire life. By the way, she happens to be also from Puerto Rico. So again, culture plays a very significant role in that negative mindset. So we had a conversation about you gotta learn to reframe. The oh my God, it's not real. The oh my God, I what if? It's not real because that's not the now. That's some story that resides somewhere, but it's not now. You're alive right now. And frankly, what if instead of the oh my God, what if you start focusing on the blessing of how grateful to be here, how grateful that it wasn't as bad, how grateful that we didn't suffer any injuries other than, of course, the mental trauma. You get what I'm saying, Stephen?
I sure do.
So, I noticed that it's we do have to take a break. So let's take a break. And Stephen, when I come back, I want to hear your perspective about what I just said. So we're gonna take a break. We'll be right back. And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Helix. I am your host, Coach Helix. With me, my amazing co host,
Stephen the Medium is here.
Steven the Medium, is here. We're talking about mindsets and the importance of mindsets in creating the life, the fulfilling life that you want. Stephen, so let me ask you, in given what I shared earlier and given your own personal experience, I talked about, that client having that recent accident. You experienced something just as serious several months ago. So, in your experience, how powerful is a mindset in somebody's life?
I think it's extremely powerful, and it's something that always has to be sort of in the top 10 of you know of your life. Just always listening and watching and making sure you're conscious about it. But I will tell you, I think what you said, Elix, about you can't just blink your eye and change this. Even though I did think of Genie from I Dream of Genie with the blinking of an eye. Just saying,
Of course you did.
that's where my
Yes.
brain goes. Um, but seriously, I think there's so many people that have been in such a situation or have lived a life, had a particular mindset for so many years that it is so difficult to get out of. And I'm talking from experience that I think over my entire life, I was someone who, in a sort of hidden way, because I think if you asked anybody that knew me growing up, would say I'm always very positive because I wake up, I'm happy. When you see me, I'm happy and positive. But I think that's just a facade that, for the most part, internally, it's been going to that sort of negative place and always sitting and living in there. And I remember, Elix, several years ago when you would try to talk to me about something like this, I would fight you, to the end and saying, nope, nope, nope. And I think because I put so many layers of living like this on top of me, and if on top, if you could see like a white light, I couldn't see any white light. I couldn't even see a shade because I lived so long like this that it was just layers and layers and layers on top of me. But then it goes back to what I said about how quickly it can change. Is when you get in that mode and you understand it, you can start knocking out those layers above you, like boom, 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 and all of a sudden you see the light and your mindset is changed. But it's also not easy to keep it that way too. So it's work. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, and oftentimes, I remember those conversations where, you say things like, "Well, you don't understand. If you were in my shoes, you would be feeling the same way." And the truth is, yeah, I don't. There are many times that I don't understand the specifics. And but one thing that is always useful. So if you are, you have a partner that is going into a very negative mindset, and you know that because you have a conversation, and the first thing that they talk about is, what's going bad, what's not working, and they focus on the negative of anything. You could help that person by simply reminding them, what if you look at from the if there's an is there any positive to that circumstance? And at first they may say, I can't imagine. For example, Stephen, you had a terrible accident, right? So if I said to you immediately after that, is there any positive, that you would have been like, no, there's nothing, right? But the truth is, so you have to wait for the right time, the right place to engage. But the truth is, there's plenty of always, always, always positive, even under the worst of circumstances. And I can tell you, when I think of you and that terrible accident, of course, you survived. You were able to get back into the building. You are here today with me, thank God. So there is plenty of positive, and we need to. Again, this is something that requires intention, that requires purpose on our behalf. And by the way, there's plenty of neuroscience behind this because oftentimes our reptilian brain, which is that primitive brain that is responsible for protecting us from perceived threat, that brain is very active for many of us. So that brain also is driven by fear-based conversations. So that's the brain that really feeds into those negative mindsets because that brain wants to keep you safe. Not because it's a bad brain, simply because it just does what it's designed to do. protect you from what it may perceive as a threat. What you have to do is we have to learn to activate, a different function of our brain, our executive brain, which is designed to open up our better critical thinking, better reasoning, innovative capabilities, empathy, and that brain activates trust in our system. And that is what may lead to a different mindset. Now, a mindset, by the way, is a series and again, highlight of made up self beliefs, made up self perceptions. And I emphasize made up because they're not real, they are made up self beliefs and self perceptions that determines behavior in a person's outlook. So again, that is what the mindset is. It's a series of made up. You are making up those self beliefs about you, about the situation, about the circumstances. You are making up those self perceptions about you, about the situation, about the circumstances. And what that leads to as a possibility is that if it's made up, you then have the opportunity and the ability to then transform that made up conversation into something that perhaps it's more empowering. What do you think, Stephen?
Well, let me just say first and foremost that I have to disagree with you what you said earlier about if you asked me what was positive about that accident and I would say nothing. That's not something that occurred. I mean, I certainly spoke about if I was on there and it was a very difficult time, but right from seconds after that happened, I knew how lucky I was, and it was based on spirit, and that saved me. And I knew how the positives that were all around. So that was always there. It was never something that, if you ask me, it was all negative. I'm far from perfect, but I do know that I've worked very hard on the mindset that we're talking about, and it's just not something that I saw no positives at all. Actually, it was the opposite for me, anyway, Elix.
Well, but that's that. And that's what I meant. I know for you, of course, because right now you're in a different plane and you're practicing all of these skills ongoingly. But for many people, they can't see the forest from the trees when something like that happened, and they tend to focus on the negative part. No, I know for you.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree with that. But you know what I think is the greatest thing about this too, Elix, is that, and I agree with everything you said, and it's so powerful. I think when you do start working on mindset and you start understanding it, it changes the way you hear other people too. So I know you and I are on pretty much very similar on where we are with mindset. So if somebody is with us and starts talking, it's like immediate that you and I will look at each other like they're coming from like this very negative mindset, like, and you'll approach it a little bit differently in trying to help. Sometimes with me, I'm just very blatant. And listen, if you keep the mindset like that, your life is going to continue to suck. That's me. Elix is way more polished and will say something that's much better, and I know that, and will help way better than my comments. But don't you agree with that, Elix, that when you're in this great place and understanding mindset, and of course we all fall into these sort of, or for me anyway, I fall into these valleys and get stuck, but we don't stay there stuck. But you get to identify it right away, right?
Absolutely, and that actually it's such a important highlight. If you're listening, listen. No matter how trained you are, no matter how good you are, you always, part of our humanness is we are going to fall into those valleys from time to time. That's part of being a human being. That's part of living life, right? What we've learned to do is we've learned to practice the art of correcting in the moment. So not sitting with it for days, for weeks, for months, for years. And by the way, many of you listening, I'm talking to you. Sometimes you sit in these negative mindsets for a lifetime. And you are also complaining that life is not working, or that you're not living the life that you want, or that you don't have a sense of fulfillment and satisfaction or love, joy, happiness, whatever that is in your life, but you've been sitting in a negative mindset that is designed to feed that for years and years and years. And often because you say, well, I don't know how to change that. Well, yes, you do. You simply start by changing the conversation. You simply start by making something up. You know, reframing it, even if you have to make it up, because you're making it up anyways. And that's the point of that conversation.
Elix, let me just throw something in quickly before we take a break. I
Sure.
shared this in one of my live classes that, and you know the story. I don't know. A couple of months ago, I was heading to this, a couple of miles down the street from our house. I was heading to this pond, and as I was heading there was a car that pulled in front of me from a side street. No blinker, just pulled in and then went really slow and pulled in right when I was approaching the street. So of course, my reaction was, what's wrong with this person? I just went on and on and on. So lo and behold, when I get to the place where I'm going, this person pulls in, and it was a woman. She had her dog. She was taking the dogs for this walk or run, whatever. And I pulled in behind her. And when she got out of the car, I got out of the car. She yelled to me, "Do you have dogs?" And I said, "No." So she let her two dogs out to run free, and in an instant just had a conversation with me. And at the end of that conversation, she was such a nice woman. And at the end of the conversation, she said goodbye to me and said, something very special is going to happen to you today. And it just really brought me back to mindset when you were just talking about this. Like, oh my God, I spent how many minutes based on my mindset of just being in this reaction place as opposed to responding place. And it really hit me so hard that I shared it with my students.
Yeah, that's a great example of how to pay attention and how to listen. She actually gave you a signal in
Oh, she
that
gave me a
moment.
lesson. She gave
Yeah,
me
a
a lesson,
lesson.
Elix. And she
Absolutely.
had no idea that she was just pulled out. She was probably looking at her dog. There was nothing intentional. And I'll tell you though, it shifted my entire day in such a great, better way.
Beautiful. Well, listen, we got to take a break. So hang there with us. We're talking about mindsets and how to shift your mindset so that you can create the life that you want. We'll be right back. And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. I'm your host, Coach Elix, and with me, my wonderful, amazing co host,
Stephen Frederick is here.
who is so foolish because anytime I have even the smallest of the bloopers, he laughs as if this is the funniest thing ever.
Silly
But
Stephen.
Seal Stephen the Medium's in the house, and we're talking about mindsets and how you have the ability to shift your mindset from a positive mindset to a negative mindset. But those are not the only two types of mindsets. There's also the abundance mindset. And Stephen, I am big on the abundance mindset. That mindset often comes very often, in particular when we're talking about money. Many people, they want more, they want better, they want you know they want to make more money in their lives, but they are stuck in a mindset that is what's the opposite of abundance? Scarcity mindset. They're always focused on not having enough or not enough, and you got to learn to create abundance as a mindset of abundance, that is, because that again, whatever mindset, and again, it's a story, it's a made up narrative story. Whatever mindset you speak is what's going to create the opening for what it is that you want. So I'm always, for me personally, I'm always thinking about abundance of clients, abundance of opportunity, abundance of, you know, great things happening, abundance of love, abundance of joy. I live in a mindset of abundance. What about you, Stephen?
Same. And I've actually picked that up from you, Elix, um, and again, that was something that was very difficult. When you live a life a certain way for so long, it's not easy, but um, when you give it a chance and you understand and see how sticking with something like a very positive mindset changes everything
Yes.
is just for the good. That is, it's pretty amazing.
Yes. And then of course there's the positive mindset versus the negative mindset. That's perhaps one of the most common, most recognizable mindsets. If you are thinking positive about what you have, about what's happened, even when there's difficult circumstances, you try to look for the silver linings. You try to look for the positive. That helps you create a positive mindset. If you find yourself dwelling in the negative, dwelling in the oh my gods, dwelling in the what ifs, then you are then stuck in a negative mindset. A positive mindset is going to lead you to positive results in your life. A negative mindset is going to lead you to negative results in your life. And I'm telling you, I live with my 97-year-old mom, and she has a tendency of going to that negative mindset. But I have a practice with her. Every time she goes into something negative, I say, okay, how about we now think of something positive? And I help her, reframe in the moment and think of something positive. Or I often say, okay, now that you complain about how terrible, you know, life is, let's think about all the wonderful things that you got. And it doesn't take her very long to, come to the conclusion of, I don't have it that bad. There's plenty of really, really good things happening. Then there's the growth mindset and the fixed mindset. And growth. There's an image that I often refer to. Growth is freedom. Think of a growth mindset as freedom. And it also, how do you define that? You persevere in the face of failure. You know that effort is required to build new skill. You find inspiration in others' success, so you're rooting for others, because when others win, you know that you win. You embrace challenges. You don't run away from challenges. You accept criticism because criticism makes us all better. they don't mean anything bad about us. You have a desire to learn and you build, your abilities. On the other hand, a fixed mindset, excuse me, it's limiting. Think of it as a limiting mindset. So, when you are more embracing that fixed limiting mindset, you are somebody who tends to avoid challenges. You give up easily. You are threatened by other success. People who, you know, they promote that jealousy, and they don't want somebody else to win because it takes away from them. You have this um, fake desire to look smart. um, you feel that putting effort into something, it's fruitless. You don't really care to hear any feedback. You're not interested in hearing feedback, and you see opportunities as fixed. They either there or they're not. You don't see them as you have the ability and the capacity to create those opportunities. So those are perhaps the common mindsets. What are you walking away with, Stephen, today out of this conversation?
Well, first of all, everything you just said over the past minute was me. I was just, as you were talking, I'm just checking off. That was me. That was me. That was me. That was me. Didn't want to hear feedback. Would get very defensive. All that kind of stuff. Um, well, what I think that there's so many things to walk away with this conversation, Elix. But I think one of the things that's really important is, and it was an experience that you and I had, that I was talking to you about an event, and I was telling you that the tickets weren't selling as quickly as I thought they were, and I was getting very down, and I
Mm-hmm.
remember you saying to me, you do realize you just a couple of weeks ago, they just had the premiere of a documentary that your first documentary you were ever filmed in, you ever appeared in. And I think part of not being in a great mindset makes you do that you get accomplishments whether you know it or not, and they're there for a second, and you're already looking for the negative. Well, this didn't happen, or this didn't happen. And I think one of the greatest things that I love that I do now, and I would definitely hope that people do, is just look back at your own accomplishments and write them down, even if it's just a couple over the past year, 5 years, 10 years. It just gives you a better perspective and helps your mindset.
Absolutely. That's really wonderful. And I was actually going to, tie it in our conversation a couple of weeks ago about our New Year goals because, we talked about how resolutions don't work. But if you create meaningful goals, and how you get to meaningful goals, the first step is you got to get yourself present to the science behind gratitude. And gratitude starts with recognizing all the things that have gone well, all the things that you should be grateful to have, all the things that you have done. And if you start 2023 being grateful first and foremost for all the good of 2022, and even all the not so good, because again, we've learned that even in the no in the areas that were not as good or what we expected, we gained something from it. So we give thanks to all of that. And that's how you set a powerful and empowering context for creating goals for 2023. But I will say this, having a mindset that is abundant, that is positive, and that is a growth mindset is what's going to set you up to have the most amazing 2023 yet, whatever your goals are. And don't shy away from being bold in having goals for this upcoming year, but know that you know achieving those goals starts with a really strong and empowering mindset. That's the foundation. Otherwise, whatever you build for 2023, it's going to be built on a compromised foundation. If you start with a mindset that is negative or fixed, guess what? Whatever you're going to get, it's going to be consistent with that mindset. Would you agree with that, Stephen?
I would agree. And I have a good friend in New York who is a talented actress, musician. Her name is Mimi. And we were just going back and forth via emails. And she said to me, what is your word for 2023? I never thought about that. And I responded that I had to think about it because I didn't have a word. And I thought, you know what, my word's going to be for 2023, boundless. Because
Mm,
how can you say that and not start in a beautiful, incredible, uplifting, great mindset?
I love it. Boundless. Wow. My word is going to be power. Power.
I love that too.
Yeah.
I love
So
it.
I'm inviting you to pick a word for 2023. And it's the end of our show, Stephen. I know you have something coming up Sunday. You want to tell people about that and how they can get a hold of you?
Yes, there's just a couple of tickets left. This is a very intimate um, experience on Sunday at 2 o'clock Eastern Time in my office in New Bedford. And it is going to be a celebration of opening my new office. But there's going to be some readings. We're going to do some chatting, have some refreshments. So just go to stephenthemedium.com if you're interested in having a fabulous Sunday afternoon at 2 p.m.
Fabulous. And thank you, everyone. You can find me at Coach Elex anywhere on social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. And thank you again for joining us. And we will be back again next week. Have a fabulous week. And thank you, Mark, for, as always, for producing the show. And thank you for the team at WARA 1320 AM radio in Attleboro for everything that you do. Happy Friday, everyone. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.